Mackenzie Rittenhouse used to date.
Okay. And on the night of the 24th, were you aware of anything going on in Kenosha?
I knew there was protests, demonstrations, and riots going on in the later evening.
Okay. And how were you aware of that?
I saw videos on social media, on Facebook live streams, TikTok of. I saw the car source lot being burned down. The car source one, what we've been referring to. I saw a police officer get assaulted. He had a brick thrown at his head. And I saw the mattress store owner get knocked out, and I believe his jaw was broken and had to be wired shut or something.
And you saw all of that on the 24th.
Yes.
Did you go to downtown Kenosha at that time and try and do anything about that?
No, I did not.
Directing your attention to the late morning of August 25th, 2020, did you have occasion to go downtown?
Did go to downtown in the morning of August.
Go there with?
I went there with Dominic Black, my sister Mackenzie Rittenhouse, and Ray Dickhart.
And describe what you did.
We walked around for a little bit, and then I believe at around 11:30 noon, we ended up at Ruther Central High School, where we ended up cleaning graffiti for about, I want to say, an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Previously marked as Exhibit 131. Do you recognize that?
I do.
Could you describe what you see in that photo?
Towards the left in the olive green shirt, that's me, and then to my left, that's Ray Dickhart, and to my right, that's my sister Mackenzie Rittenhouse. And
what are you doing there?
we're cleaning graffiti off of Ruther Central High School.
And were you getting paid to do this?
No, I was not.
And you see what the graffiti says?
Yes.
And you do what it said as you were cleaning it off?
Yes.
I won't repeat it. After you were done doing that, what did you do?
We went to the car source lot, the first location, and we were looking at the destruction of the burnt cars, and we saw the owner, Sam and Sal, I believe that's what they told us their names were.
And you saw, when we say car source, the one that you met Sam and Sal at is what we've been referring to as car source number 1?
Yes.
And that's the one that they just played a video of all the burnt out cars?
Yes.
Did you have any discussions with Sam and Sal?
Briefly, I offered my condolences, and I said, if there's anything I can do, please reach out to me. He gave me his number. I gave him my number. And
you were with Dominic Black at that time?
I was.
And your sister?
Yes.
And what did you do after that?
After that, we walked back to, I believe, we parked our car by, you see the parking lot?
Do you have the pointer up there?
Yes. We parked our car right in that corner, somewhere over there.
I can't see that far, I'm sorry. You're referring to the parking lot, which is at the corner, 5th Sheridan, East corner.
Correct.
And you had 8th Street, correct?
Yes.
Okay, you can put the pointer down. And whose car did you get there in?
Dominic Black. Parking lot. We went to Black's stepfather's house again, and we hung out there for a little bit.
Okay. And did you have any that
evening around 3:34? Nick Smith called me, and Dominic.
And when he called you, what was the nature of the call?
At first, Nick Smith wanted us to drive him to Chicago by O'Hare Airport, the suburbs of Chicago, because he wanted to buy a bulletproof vest. And Dominic said, okay, we'll drive him. And then he said, okay, I need you to pick me up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock.
Okay. Did you go and pick him up eventually?
Yes. We actually, before we picked him up, we went to Jelensky's.
Okay. What did you do at Jelensky's?
We bought. Dominic wanted me to buy 2 rifle slings.
And did you?
I did.
One was for what?
One was for my rifle, and the other one was for Dominic's rifle.
Okay. And why did you care about your rifles that evening?
The reason for the slings were just so it's like a retainer. So if I'm helping somebody with first aid, I can just like dangle my rifle behind me, and I don't have to worry about somebody just randomly going and picking it up off the ground, just as like an extra measure, so it won't be taken from the ground.
And what time did you go to Jelensky's?
I want to say about 2:30, but I don't know exactly for sure.
Okay. When did you first have contact with Nick Smith?
3:30, 3:15.
Okay.
3:15.
And was there any discussion regarding Car Source at that time?
Yes.
What?
Nick Smith, once we picked him up, we drove. He wanted to go to a bank to withdraw money. The bank was closed, and then he was like, "Hey, would you guys like to come with me and help watch over the Car Source, make sure there's no fires or anything?" And Dominic said yes. I agreed. I said okay. And then I said, "Here, Nick, I don't really need my bulletproof vest. I'm going to be helping people with first aid." So I gave him my bulletproof vest.
And by you giving him your bulletproof vest, did that stop the need to go to someplace by O'Hare Airport?
Yes.
And why does a 17-year-old kid have a bulletproof vest?
It was issued to me by the Grays Lake Police Department.
You didn't purchase it?
No, I did not.
And after you gave him your bulletproof vest, where did you go?
We went back to Nick Smith's house where we parked Dominic Black's car.
And then what did you do?
We walked from Mr. Smith's house. Once we parked at Nick Smith's house, we walked from Nick Smith's house to the Car Source 1, cutting through the Ruther Central backside parking lot because Nick Smith lives on the same street of.
You don't have to say where Nick Smith
Okay.
lives. He lives within walking distance from here?
Yes.
Okay. And so you go to Car Source 1,
Yes.
and that's the burnt out one?
No, Car Source 2, my bad, across the street.
Okay. And at Car Source 2, that's where you spent most of the evening?
Yes.
Okay. When you first got to Car Source 2, the one at 59th and Sheridan, what happened?
The owners were there, Sam, Sal, and his father, and I believe, I think it was his uncle there also. He was driving a van of some sort.
And what was the discussion?
Sam and Sal thanked us for coming out to help. And then Sal said, "Hey, why don't you guys hop in my car?" If I remember correctly, it was either a white or black BMW or Mercedes. I don't recall exactly.
And why did he want you to get in his car?
He was going to drive us down to Car Source lot number 3.
Okay. And did you agree to get in his car?
I did.
And who went to Car Source number 3?
Me, Dominic Black, and Nick Smith.
And who was driving?
Sal.
And when you got there, what happened?
We got out and we hung around for a couple minutes, and then some people showed up. I now know who they are, but at the time I didn't.
Show you what's been marked as Exhibit 3030. Do you recognize that exhibit?
I do.
And can you, Your Honor, can you go up there, please, and point out, can you point out the people who you knew before that picture was taken and name them?
Yes. This is. This is Sal, the owner. This is Ryan Balch. This is Joanne Fiedler. This is Justin Hamilton. This is Dustin Colette. This is Nicholas Smith. I don't recall his name. This is me, and this is Dominic Black.
Okay. We've heard testimony. You can have a seat. We've heard testimony about you, Nick, and Dominic. You knew those individuals before August 25th of 2020?
I knew Nicholas Smith and Dominic Black.
Okay. You did not know the owner of CarSource previously?
I did not.
Was he being nice to you guys? Was he happy you were there? Was he mad at you for being there? Describe it.
He was happy we were there.
Okay. And you heard their testimony, the two owners. I believe that was Friday afternoon.
I did.
And did they give you permission to be there?
They did.
And the other individuals in this photograph, some of whom have testified in this trial, 10 minutes before this photograph was taken, did you know any of them?
I did not.
Had you ever spoken to any of them?
No.
And when you were there, what was the idea? Was there a plan? What was going to happen?
Yes, the plan was to, I went down there to provide first aid. I brought my orange first aid kit, the fanny pack, and I also brought my Pelican box, which was filled with first aid stuff by my feet to provide first aid.
The orange box by your feet you referred to as a Pelican box?
Yes.
Did you have that before the 25th?
Yes.
Was it stocked?
Yes.
With things that you had bought and brought?
Yes.
And do you go with that every day, or is that because of the situation?
It was in the trunk of my car.
Okay. And the fanny pack, what's the situation with that?
It was my work bag. I brought it to work with me, and I would put it under my lifeguard booth.
Okay. And that had first aid supplies?
Yes.
Now, after the meeting here at 63rd and Sheridan Road, what's been referred to as CarSource 3, what happened?
After the photograph, I believe, I don't recall exactly, but there was about 2 or 3 vans that pulled up, like big vans with people inside of them.
Okay. And what was their role in this evening?
Well, they showed up and they wanted to protect the business, and I didn't really have a say in what everybody was doing. I was just there doing my first aid stuff. And then Ryan Ball said, hey, why don't you guys stay here? And we'll go down to the CarSource number 2.
Okay. And so the people, a group of people was going to stay at CarSource 3, and the people depicted in this photograph were going to go where?
CarSource 2.
And is that what happened?
Yes.
And so at that point, then Sam and Sal had coverage, for lack of a better word, at both of their businesses to protect the property, correct?
Yes.
So you get down to CarSource 2. Did all of these people go there?
Yes. Besides Sal, the owner, he did not.
Okay. During the night, was Sam and Sal there?
They were not.
They left you guys there.
Yes. I believe Nick Smith was in contact with them throughout the night. I'm not certain, but I believe they were.
And you get down there, were you able to get in and out of the business?
Yes.
How?
Sal, the owner, actually gave Nick Smith a set of keys.
Did you personally see that?
I did.
Did he give you any other direction regarding any equipment or anything like that?
He let us know where, like, the power washers and the fire. I think there was a single fire extinguisher in the building and some hoses, the hose hookups, just in case there was any fires we needed to put out at the lot.
Anything else about roof?
He showed I believe it was Dominic Black and Nick Smith, the 2 ladders that were there to get up on the roof.
Okay. And did you guys use those ladders?
I didn't personally, but the people that were on the roof did.
Okay. And you saw them use those ladders?
I didn't see them, but that's how they got up there.
Okay. Where were you predominantly at CarSource 2?
I was in front of the CarSource 2.
Now, during the night at CarSource 2, did you stay there the whole time?
No. Time.
When you would leave CarSource 2,
with mulch, and we would go ask if anybody needed any first aid assistance, and we would see if there were any fires, and we.
Okay. Did you personally put out any fires?
I did.
Where?
I put one out at the church.
Can you use the pointer?
So right here was where there was the demolishing. They were breaking some stuff down, but right here, I believe there was another building with an alleyway. It was either right here or right here. I don't remember fully, but there was a fire down the alleyway where they were trying to set the building and church on fire, and me and Mr. Balch, and I believe somebody else was with us. We went to go put that fire out.
Did you put it out?
We did.
Then what did you do?
Around that time, we saw Ruther Central High School on fire, the front doors, and we were walking north down Sheridan Road to go put the fire out. And then somebody else put the fire out before we got to Ruther Central High School.
When you say the front, is that right here on Civic Park?
No, sorry, that's my mistake. You're walking north on Sheridan. It's the side of the building on Sheridan Road towards the left when you're walking north.
In the general area where you had tried to help remove graffiti earlier?
Yes, in that photo to the right.
Okay. And during the evening, was there any friction between your group and protesters / rioters?
No. The only type of stuff that happened was the person that attacked me first threatened to kill me twice.
Okay. And the person who threatened to kill you, we now know was Mr. Rosenbaum, correct?
Yes.
Before August 25th of 2020, had you ever seen him before?
I did not.
Had you ever done anything to upset him?
No.
Now, you said he threatened to kill you twice.
Yes.
Describe the first time.
The first time was me and Ryan Balch were a little bit north, towards the north corner of 59th and Sheridan, and Mr. Rosenbaum was walking with a steel chain, and he had a blue mask around his face, and he was just mad about something. Me and Mr. Balch were asking people if they needed medical help, and then he screamed, sorry for my language, he screamed, "If I catch any of you fuckers alone, I'm going to fucking kill you."
And that was directed at you and Mr. Balch?
It was directed at both of us, what I believe.
And there was a second occasion where he threatened you?
Yes. The second time was outside of the car source. And I don't know if it was directed towards me, but I heard it. He said to, I believe it was Joanne Fiedler, Dustin, Colette, and another guy. He was screaming. He said, "I'm going to cut your fucking hearts out and kill." I'm not going to repeat the second word, but kill you, N-words.
Now, did you ever see Mr. Rosenbaum doing any physical property damage?
I did.
Where?
I saw him with, I now know to be Joshua Zeminski. I saw him tip that trailer over and the porta potty. I saw him do both. And I believe he tried to start the porta potty on fire. I don't know. I don't think he succeeded. But then I saw him with Mr. Zeminski. He was either helping start it or he was like throwing stuff on it. I don't know which one he was doing.
Where did you originally see that trailer?
That trailer was in the St. James Church parking lot. Sort of like right over here in like the backish corner, what I remember.
And did you see how it got from there to where it was put on fire?
It was pulled.
By who?
It was several people that pulled it into the street, but I can't tell you definitely who pulled it into the street.
And you went down there and saw them starting a fire?
I didn't go down there. I was at the corner of the car source lot.
Okay. And you referred to Mr. Zeminski. before August 25th of 2020, had you ever met Mr. Zeminski?
I have not.
Did you ever meet him since?
I have not.
Now, when you first saw Mr. Rosenbaum, was his top half of his body clothed or unclothed?
He was clothed with a blue mask the first time I saw him. Yeah, blue mask.
And what color was his shirt, if you remember?
A dark red-ish color.
Now, did you provide medical help to anyone?
I did.
Describe a couple of those occasions.
The first time I provided medical help to someone was this lady. I think she sprained her ankle or twisted. I don't know exactly. I'm not an expert on x-rays, or I wouldn't know. She hurt her ankle and she was being carried by two gentlemen. And I said, hey, before that I was just, but I was like, hey, do you need help? And she said yes. And I said, okay, let's go into the car source where I was. And I wrapped her ankle and then she went on her way. And I let her know there was a hospital. I want to say southbound Sheridan, across the street from car source 3. Hospital was over there and she should go get it.
Anybody else?
Yes.
What?
Somebody threw a chemical bomb, actually right after I heard, I'm going to cut your hearts out from Mr. Rosenbaum. I don't know who threw it, but somebody threw a chemical bomb, and Ryan Balch had some effects of it. So I helped Mr. Balch with being able to breathe, and I helped flush his eyes out and had him drink some water.
Okay. You, in the answer to the question just before, you said something about being pepper sprayed.
I did.
And where did that happen?
That happened at the car source. Right. I believe it's the first time a big crowd of people were over there. I was pepper sprayed by somebody that was in the crowd. I don't know why, but I was pepper sprayed.
Did you do anything in retaliation?
I did not.
Now, directing your attention to later in the evening, did there come an occasion where you had contact with Mr. McGinnis?
There was.
And before this evening, August 25th, 2020, did you ever met or spoke to Mr. McGinnis?
I have not.
And you and Mr. McGinnis and Mr. Balch go someplace?
Yes.
And describe that.
I get done with my interview with Mr. McGinnis and I asked Mr. McGinnis, no, I don't ask him. I said, if you want to come with us, that's fine, to document and film me and Ryan helping people. And he said, yeah, sure. And he followed behind us.
And in that tape for Mr. McGinnis, there's talk about you being an EMT, correct?
Yes.
Are you an EMT?
I am not.
You have first aid and other training.
I do.
And you go to south on Sheridan Road?
Correct.
You cross 60th and Sheridan Road?
I believe we stay just to the right, going south on Sheridan Road.
And eventually you cross Sheridan Road?
Eventually.
And were the Bearcats there yet?
No. Yes, they were.
Okay. Had they set up a line to stop people that you were aware of?
Not that I was aware of. I just know they were parked right there and people were throwing rocks at them.
Did anybody tell you not to cross that line? You wouldn't be able to go back?
Not until later in the evening.
Okay. You cross that line, where do you go?
We continue straight in a southerly direction down Sheridan Road.
Okay. Were you going any place in particular?
No, we were just going to see if anybody needed medical help. And I looked at a guy's shoulder on the way there.
Okay. And you finished with the guy's shoulder and you continue on, and what happens?
I continue walking in a southerly direction down Sheridan Road, and then as I'm walking, I believe you guys have been referring to him as Yellow Pants. He said he said something to me. I believe it was, you were the one that pointed your rifle at me with the laser pointed at me. I believe that's what I heard. And I didn't. That's the first time I saw him that night, so I was confused. So I said I did, and then I continued to walk away.
And was the did an admission that you did it, or more of a statement with a question?
It was a sarcastic remark.
Okay. Did you engage with him any further?
No.
And from there, where do you go?
There I continue walking in a southerly direction, merging towards the middle of Sheridan Road.
Okay. At that point, do you become aware of anything?
In about as I'm walking, I start to look because I realize Mr. Balch is not with me anymore.
Okay. Did you continue on your way down Sheridan Road without Mr. Balch?
No, I actually went to go look for Mr. Balch in the Ultimate gas station parking lot.
Okay. When you went to the Ultimate gas station parking lot, describe what was going on there.
There were a lot of people there. I don't really know what was going on. I was just focused on trying to find Mr. Balch. As I was looking for him, couldn't find him. I said, okay, no problem. I'll just go back to the car source lot. Dominic Black.
Let me back up. Were you able to get back to car source number 2?
No, I did not.
Describe that.
As I was trying to get back, the police stopped me. Well, didn't stop me. They told me, I believe they said lines of to not go down there. And I was telling them, hey, I need to go down there. That's where I'm at, that business. I exactly how that conversation went, but they wouldn't let me go back to car source lot number 2.
So you weren't able to car source 2?
I was not.
Did you disobey the police's order?
No.
And you're alone, you're stuck on the other side of the police line from the car source 2. Where do you go?
I go to where there's other people at the gas station protecting the gas station, and I go there because I believe that's the safest place to go because there's other people there. And
at that point, were you able to find Mr. Balch?
I was not.
Well, you're at the Ultimate gas station, I think we've been calling it.
Correct.
Point it out, just there's no.
Right there, the Ultimate Convenience Center, diagonal from the Gulf gas station.
Okay. And when you were there, what's the next significant thing that happened?
Dominic Black calls me and he says, Kyle, I need you to get down to the car source lot number 3. The cars are being bashed in. They're setting all the cars on fire. I need you to go and put the fires out.
Okay. And did you do anything as a result of that phone call?
I did.
What?
At the Ultimate gas station, I asked, I don't know who he is, but I asked an individual if he could come with me and if I could have a fire extinguisher to put out the fires.
Were both of those requests satisfied?
One of them were.
What?
I was given a fire extinguisher, but he said he can't come with me, and he said he believes there's already people down there helping protect the business.
Okay. And what did you do then?
I start running towards the car source lot number 3 to put out the fires, pausing occasionally to catch my breath and walk.
Okay. On the way to car source 3, did you have any interaction with Mr. Rosenbaum?
I did not.
Did you speak to Mr. Rosenbaum?
No.
Did you notice Mr. Rosenbaum doing anything as you went down to car source 3?
I didn't notice Mr. Rosenbaum until he came out from behind the car and ambushed me.
Okay, I'll get to that. Did you run the whole way?
No, I didn't.
Okay. You had your gun, correct?
Yes.
And you had a fire extinguisher,
Yes.
and you had your medic.
My medical bag, yes.
And were you asking people about medic at that point?
I was asking people if they needed medical help as I was getting down there.
Did you receive any responses?
No, I didn't.
Describe your approach to car source number 3.
As I'm walking down Sheridan Road, I hear somebody scream, "Burn in hell," and I replied with friendly, friendly, friendly to let them know, hey, I'm just here to help. I don't want any problems. I just want to put out the fires if there are any. I continue walking, and then I notice the Duramax. I notice a in the back seat of the Duramax, and I step towards the Duramax, and as I'm stepping forward, I believe his name is now Joshua Zeminski. He steps towards me with a pistol, and as I'm walking towards to put out the fire, I drop the shirt and I take a step back.
Okay. When you step back from Mr. Zeminski, what's your plan?
My plan is to get out of that and go back north down Sheridan Road to where the car source lot number 2 was.
And did you get back? Were you able to go in a northerly direction?
I wasn't.
Describe what happened.
Once I take that step back, I look over my shoulder and Mr. Rosenbaum and go back north down Sheridan Road to where the car source lot number 2 was.
And did you get back? Were you able to go in a northerly direction?
I wasn't.
Describe what happened.
Once I take that step back, I look over my shoulder and Mr. Rosenbaum was now running from my right side. And I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski. And there were there were 3 people right there.
Take a deep breath, Kyle.
That's what That's where I run.
We're going to just take time for our break anyway. You can just relax for a minute, sir. We're going to take a break about 10 minutes, and please don't talk about the case during the break. Read, watch, or listen to any account of the trial.
To get out of that and go back north down Sheridan Road to where the car source lot number 2 was.
And did you get back? Were you able to go in a northerly direction?
I wasn't.
Describe what happened.
Once I take that step back, I look over my shoulder and Mr. Rosenbaum and go back north down Sheridan Road to where the car source lot number 2 was.
And did you get back? Were you able to go in a northerly direction?
I wasn't.
Describe what happened.
Once I take that step back, I look over my shoulder and Mr. Rosenbaum was now running from my right side. And I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski. And there were There were 3 people right there.
Take a deep breath, Kyle.
That's what I. That's what I run.
We're going to just take time for our break anyway. You can just relax for a minute, sir. We're going to take a break about 10 minutes, and please.
contact with Mr. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
And
Oh, wait.
I apologize.
Oh, forgive me. We got everybody? Start.
You were testifying about coming into contact with Mr. Rosenbaum,
Yes.
and you saw Mr. Rosenbaum. What happened?
Once I got to that car and I stepped forward to fire in the Duramax out, and Mr. Zeminski stepped towards me, I went to go run back south down Sheridan, and Mr. Rosenbaum was right there at the corner of the Duramax, starting to chase me. And that's when I realized the only place I can run with the people around me is straight towards the building of the car source lot number 3.
When you saw Mr. Rosenbaum, that's when you said friendly, friendly?
When I heard burn inside, I don't know exactly where I was at in the time for that.
Did Mr. Rosenbaum say anything to you?
No, Mr. Zeminski instructed Mr. Rosenbaum to get him and kill him. That's what I heard.
And you go running what's been referred to the southwest corner of car source.
Yes.
And as you're running in that direction, describe being chased. What was happening?
As I'm running in that southwest direction, Mr. Rosenbaum throws, at the time, I know it's a bag now, but when he threw it at me, with the light, it looked silver and it looked like the chain when he threw it at me. And then I continue, I turn around for about a second while continuing to run, and I point my gun at Mr. Rosenbaum.
Does that stop him from chasing you?
It does not.
Okay. After you turn around and you had your hands up kind of in a low ready position,
Yes.
and you see Mr. Rosenbaum coming at you,
Yes.
and what do you do then?
After he throws the bag and he continues to run, he's gaining speed on me. A gunshot is fired from behind me, directly behind me, and I take a few steps, and that's when I turn around. And as I'm turning around, Mr. Rosenbaum is, I would say, from me to where the judge is, coming at me with his arms out in front of him. I remember his hand on the barrel of my gun.
And why didn't you just keep running?
When I was over there, there were about 100 people surrounding those cars, and there was no space for me to continue to run to.
Okay. And so you turned around,
Yes,
and as you see him lunging at you, what do you do?
I shoot him.
And how many times did you shoot?
I believe 4.
And after you shot him, what did you do?
The people around the cars that were originally there were not there anymore. They moved away, and I ran around to see if I could help Mr. Rosenbaum.
And when you got to Mr. Rosenbaum, what was happening?
Mr. McGinnis he took off his helmet and slammed it on the ground and took off his shirt, and I don't remember what he said. I wasn't focused on that. I was in shock, sort of.
Let me back up a second. Did you know Mr. McGinnis was even around?
I didn't.
Okay. And he says something to you, and what do?
I pull out my phone and I call Dominic Black.
And you call Dominic, and what do you say?
I told him I just shot somebody. I had to shoot him.
And what do you do then?
I now know it to be Kelly Zeminski, Joshua Zeminski, and I don't know the other people who were screaming, "Get his ass, get his ass, get him, get him, get him."
And based upon that, did you feel as though you were safe to stay where you were at?
I thought the safest option would be to go north down Sheridan to turn myself into the law enforcement down there.
And as you head down Sheridan Road, describe what's going on.
as I'm running, at first I'm in the sidewalk, and Mr. Lukowski, Jason Lukowski, is in the sidewalk, and I stop to talk to Mr. Lukowski for a brief second. I remember telling him that I just shot somebody and I need help to get to the police because the crowd, there was not a crowd, a mob was chasing me.
And did Mr. Lukowski offer you any help?
I don't remember.
Okay. What do you do then?
I continued to run after hearing people were saying, cranium him, get him, kill him. People were screaming, and I just was trying to get to the police running down Sheridan Road.
And you say, I'm trying to get to the police. Why were you trying to get to the police?
So I didn't do anything wrong. I defended myself.
Did you feel as though there was safety where the police were?
Yes.
And as you head down Sheridan Road, what's the next thing you remember?
The next thing I remember is Anthony Huber striking me in the head with a skateboard.
Okay. As you sit here today, do you remember talking to Gage Grosswoods?
Yeah, sorta, a little bit. I didn't know it was Gage Grosskreutz when he came up to me, but sorta.
Okay. And when this individual runs up to you and gets how close?
I would say within a foot.
Did you shoot him?
I did not.
Did you point your gun at him?
I did not.
Why not?
I didn't see him as a threat to my safety or life.
Okay. Was he armed at that time?
Not that I noticed.
Okay. And you continue running in a northerly direction down Sheridan Road?
Correct.
And as you're running in that direction, you said the next thing you remember is Anthony Huber.
Yes.
Describe that.
Anthony Huber, what I remember is running past Anthony Huber, and as I'm running past Mr. Huber, he's holding a skateboard like a baseball bat, and he swings it down, and I block it with my arm, trying to prevent it from hitting me, but it still hits me in the neck. And as I block it, it goes flying somewhere off in the distance.
And you stop then?
No.
What do you do next?
I keep running down Sheridan Road towards the police line.
Then what happens?
I get lightheaded. I almost pass out, and I stumble and hit the ground.
Okay. Before you hit the ground, how many times were you struck?
I believe twice.
Okay. Do you remember anything about the other one?
I remember the first one being a rock. I don't remember who did it, but I remember like the bumpiness of like a concrete rock hitting me in the back of the head.
Okay. Now, after being struck with Mr. Huber's skateboard, you end up on the ground.
Yes.
You're on the ground. What's the first thing you remember?
As I'm on the ground, there are people around me. I don't recall how many, but I remember moving my rifle in their direction, and they back off besides one person.
When you noticed people by you, you said you moved your rifle in their direction.
Yes.
Did that individual keep coming?
The last person did.
Okay. The people that stopped, what did you do to them?
Nothing.
Okay. And you're saying the last person in that group continued to come at you?
Yes.
And describe what happened.
The last person, I don't know his name. I don't think he was ever identified. Jumps at me he was wearing boots, I believe. And as he's running at me and jumping, as his boot is making contact with my face, I fired 2 shots at him.
Why did you shoot at him?
I thought if I would to be knocked out, or he would have stomped my face in if I didn't fire.
As a result of being kicked in the face, what happens?
Mr. Huber, immediately after I'm kicked in the face, runs up as I'm sitting up to try to get up and get to the police. I'm on my back, and Mr. Huber runs up. As I'm getting up, he strikes me in the neck with his skateboard a second time.
Then what happened?
he grabs my gun, and I can feel it pulling away from me, and I can feel the strap starting to come off my body.
And what do you do then?
I fire one shot.
And after you fire, striking, we now know, Mr. Huber, what do you do?
I lower my weapon, and I see Mr. Grosskreutz with his hands up. And as I'm lowering my weapon, I look down, and then Mr. Grosskreutz, he lunges at me with his pistol pointed directly at my head.
Now, you heard Mr. Grosskreuz's testimony about re-racking.
Yes,
Did you re-rack your weapon?
I did not.
Could I have the exhibit, please? Make sure it's safe, if you would. Showing you what's been previously marked, Exhibit 28. Do you recognize this?
I do.
Now, when somebody would, as Mr. Grosskreutz said, re-rack, is that this?
Yes.
Do you call it re-racking?
I call it charging, putting a live round into the chamber.
And to recharge, you have to pull this all the way back.
Yes.
Say that's about 4 inches. No, I'm asking you if you agree with that approximation. Mr. Rittenhouse, how far do you think that is?
3-4 inches.
And if the weapon is loaded and you re-rack, what happens?
If there's already a round in the chamber, when you re-rack the rifle, a live round would come out, chambering a new round into the chamber.
Now, we got to the point where Mr. Grosskreutz is standing in front of you, has his hands up,
Correct.
and are you aware that he's armed?
At that point, I do see a pistol in his hand.
Is that the same or different from your first encounter with Mr. Grosskreutz?
That is different.
And he is standing, you said, how close to you?
What I remember is our feet were touching, what it seemed like.
Okay. And you do what?
My rifle is down. His hands are up. His pistol is in his hand. And then Mr. Grosskreutz looks at me. And that's when Mr. Grosskreutz brings his arm down like this. Like his arm is like that with me on the ground, and his pistol is pointed at me, and that's when I shoot him
How many times did you shoot him?
once.
And after you shoot Mr. Grosskreutz, do you know where you shot him?
No.
What happens after you shoot him?
He's no longer a threat to me. There's only one person in front of me, and his hands are up. I briefly point my rifle at him, and I get onto one knee, getting up, and he backs up with his hands up, and I don't shoot him.
Did you notice anybody to your sides?
To my left, there was a gentleman with a pipe. And to my right, I believe it was a fence post. I don't know what it was, but it was a large object.
Once you're to your feet, what do you do?
I start walking towards the police line to turn myself into the police.
Describe, where is the police line? Is it still in the same place?
It moved up a little bit. I was down in the road about approximately right here. I'd say over here somewhere in this area. I don't remember exactly, but the police line was right here. I could see the flashing lights as I was trying to get to the police before.
Okay. And as you go towards the police line, describe what happens.
I run and walk. I put my hands up, and as I'm walking towards the police, I can't really hear anything. Um, my vision is very narrow. I can only see directly in front of me. I see the flashing lights. I remember I occasionally tried to move my rifle behind me to put it behind me the so I could so the police didn't see me as a threat when I tried to turn myself in. I continue to walk, and then I walk towards the window of the sedan, the police cruiser sedan. I don't know what they're called. Um, and I tell the officer, I just shot somebody. I just shot somebody. And the officer says, get the fuck back or you're going to get pepper sprayed. Go home, go home, go home.
And where do you go after you step back from the police car?
I go to car source number 2.
Okay. And now there wasn't a line there. They weren't stopping people from going in a northerly direction.
No, they weren't.
And you go to car source, what we refer to as car source number 2. And who do you see?
I get there and I think the first person I see is Joanne Fiedler. I don't remember exactly, but I believe that's who's outside at the door. They let me inside. The door was locked, so somebody had to get the key to unlock it. And then we go inside, and I'm in shock. I don't really remember what was happening in there. I was freaking out. I was just attacked. My head was spinning.
And did you go and turn yourself into the Kenosha Police Department?
I did not.
Why not?
The Kenosha Police Department was barricaded off with a fence, and I don't think they were accepting anybody to come to the police department at that time.
What did you do then?
I went to the nearest police department that I knew of, which was Antioch Police Department in Illinois by my house.
Who took you there?
My mother.
Okay. How did you get to Antioch from downtown Kenosha?
Dominic Black drove me.
Okay. And then Dominic Black drives you where?
He drives me to my house in Antioch, Illinois, where I meet with my mother and sisters, and I tell them what happened. I sort of tell them what happened. I was still in shock. My head was still spinning, and then we go to the Antioch Police Department where I turn myself in.
Who drove you to the Antioch Police Department?
My mother.
And did anybody else go there with you?
Not at first.
Okay. And you get to the Antioch Police Department approximately what time?
I would say about an hour after the shooting.
Okay. And when you get there, are they looking for you?
No,
Did you have to explain to somebody?
I had to tell them that I was just involved in a shooting in Kenosha and I needed Kenosha detectives.
Did they take you into custody immediately?
No,
What did they do?
they had me sit in the lobby of the police department.
Were you handcuffed to a chair?
I was not.
Did you stay there?
For about, I couldn't give you the exact time, but until Detective Howard and Detective Antaranium showed up.
And were you having any physical discomfort as you waited there?
I was vomiting and having panic attacks, and my head was spinning, and I couldn't think clearly at that point.
I have nothing to prove.
Officer Tim?
Good morning, Mr. Rittenhouse.
Morning.
Everybody that you shot at that night, you intended to kill, correct?
I didn't intend to kill them. I intended to stop the people who were attacking me.
By killing them.
I did what I had to do to stop the person who was attacking me.
By killing them.
2 of them passed away, but I stopped the threat from attacking me.
By using deadly force
I used deadly force.
that you knew was going to kill.
I didn't know if it was going to kill them, but I used deadly force to stop the threat that was attacking me.
You intentionally used deadly force against Joseph Rosenbaum, correct?
Yes.
You intentionally used deadly force against the man who came and tried to kick you in the face,
Yes.
correct? You intentionally used deadly force against Anthony Huber, correct?
Yes.
You intentionally used deadly force against Gage Grosskreutz, correct?
Yes.
With regard to Joseph Rosenbaum, you fired 4 shots at him, correct?
Yes.
You intended to kill him, correct?
I didn't intend to kill him. I intended to stop the person who was attacking me and trying to steal my gun.
Since August 25th, 2020, this is the first time that you have told your story.
Object to this.
Sustained.
Since August 25th, 2020, you've had the benefit of watching countless videos of your actions that night, correct?
I've seen certain videos, not all of them. I've seen the majority of them actually here during the trial.
You've also had the opportunity to read articles. People have written interviews, things like that about what happened that night, correct?
I do my best to avoid what people write on the internet. A majority of it's not true.
You have also sat here through 8 days of trial, correct?
Yes.
And you've had the opportunity to watch all of the videos that have been
Yes.
played in this trial.
Yes.
Sir, if you could please let me finish my question before answering. And I will do my best to let you finish your answer before I go on to the next question. Fair?
Yes.
You've also had the opportunity to listen to the testimony of all 30-some witnesses that have testified in this trial so far, correct?
Yes.
And after all of that, now you are telling us your side of the story, correct?
Correct.
I'm going to ask you folks to go in the library for just a second. Please don't talk about the case.
Commenting on my client's right to remain silent.
You need to account for this.
Your Honor, I don't want to jury here. He's commenting on my client's right to remain silent.
No, Your Honor. I am making the point that after hearing everything in the case, now he's tailoring his story to what has already been introduced.
The problem is, this is a grave constitutional violation for you to talk about the defendant's silence. And that is, and you're right on the borderline. And you may be over, but it better stop.
Understood.
I can't think of the case, the initial case on it, but this is not permitted. All right, ask the jury to come in, please. Sustain the objection.
You were armed with an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle that evening, correct?
Yes.
You had it loaded with 30 rounds of full metal jacket ammunition, correct?
Yes.
That weapon with 30 rounds is capable of killing at least 30 people, correct?
Yes.
You had arranged to have Dominic Black purchase that weapon for you in Ladysmith, Wisconsin in early May of 2020. Is that correct?
We were up north shooting and not shooting. We were up north going camping, and Dominic Black brought his rifle, and we were talking. I was like, "Hey, what if we get a rifle for me? I'll give you the money. You can purchase it. It's yours until I'm 18." So I bought the rifle for Dominic, and I can use it. But once I'm 18, we can do a private sale, and we can have it turned over to my name once I turned 18.
Because you knew as a 17-year-old, you could not have that gun, correct?
I knew I could not buy that gun.
You knew you could not possess that gun also, correct?
No.
You weren't aware that under Wisconsin law,
I'm going to instruct the jury later about the law. So, and that he wouldn't, what he thinks on the subject is not dispositive anyway. So, it was unlawful for him to purchase the gun.
it wasn't just unlawful for you to purchase it, it was unlawful for you to bring it home, correct?
In Illinois, I wasn't able to bring it home because I didn't have a FOID card, a firearm owner identification card.
You
in
knew
Illinois.
You knew in Illinois that you couldn't get that until you turned 18, correct?
No, you can get a FOID card at 16 in Illinois.
But you didn't have one.
I did not.
And even after this gun was purchased for you in May, you never got one after that either, did you?
Actually, I applied for a FOID card in May of 2020, but due to the charges, and there was a backlog in Illinois for the FOID card. But after you filed the charges against me, it was denied because of the charges here in the state.
You found out about that after you were criminally charged in this case?
I found out about this in November of 2020. A letter was sent to my old residence.
So you knew that without that FOID card, the gun could not go back to your residence in Illinois, correct?
Correct.
And you agreed that the gun would be kept at Dominic Black's stepfather's house here in Kenosha, correct?
Because he had a safe, yes.
And you agreed that you wouldn't have access to that gun, correct?
We agreed that the only time I would use the gun is when I was with him, and we would go to like the Bristol shooting range or up north to his land.
But the only time prior to the night of August 25th, 2020, that you ever used that gun was up in Ladysmith, correct?
Correct.
So you didn't go to the Bristol shooting range ever.
I
with that
did.
gun.
Not with that rifle, but I did.
Pay attention to my question, please. You didn't ever go to the Bristol shooting range with that gun, correct?
Correct.
And you picked out that gun because Dominic had one, correct?
Yeah.
You could have, if you wanted to, chosen from any number of guns that were for sale. Fair enough?
That were at that store. There weren't many, but yes.
I'm sure the store in Ladysmith isn't the only store that sells guns, correct?
You can ask questions.
That was a question.
No, it was a statement.
Isn't it correct, Mr. Rittenhouse, that there are other places to purchase guns besides that one store in Ladysmith, Wisconsin?
I believe so, but that's where we're at, so that's where we got the gun.
And you, if you wanted to, could have given Dominic Black money to purchase a gun at other locations. Fair?
Didn't cross my mind, but now that you say it, yeah.
Why did you pick or want Dominic Black to buy for you an AR-15 as opposed to a pistol or a shotgun or some other type of rifle?
I cannot legally possess or carry a pistol because I'm not 18 in Wisconsin. I believe it's 18 in Wisconsin for a pistol. But with the rifle, I knew I could possess that rifle. I knew I couldn't buy it, but I knew I could like take it to like the shooting range or possess it. And with shotguns, they didn't have any shotguns in stock. That was my original plan, to get a shotgun for trap shooting, but there weren't any at that Lady Smith store, and I didn't want to go to Walmart and buy one.
So your understanding at that time was that Wisconsin law prohibited you as a 17-year-old from possessing a pistol, but you could have an AR-15?
Yes.
What was that understanding based on?
The understanding was based on when we would go up north. It was me, Dominic, and my sister, and we were allowed to carry the rifles around, and the officers over there said it was fine.
I'm going to move to strike as hearsay. What officers would have told
You
me.
asked the question on what the source of his knowledge was. It's not admissible, and none of this is, frankly, and that's why I interrupted before. What the defendant believes the law to be, what the district attorney believes the law to be, what the defense believes the law to be, are irrelevant. I will tell you when I instruct you what the law of Wisconsin is pertaining to the possession of a firearm by a person under 18, and that'll be the source of your knowledge. I'm allowing the testimony right now because it bears on. There's an old maxim under the law of ignorantia juris non excusat. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. Ignorance of the criminal law is not an excuse. If you commit a criminal act, whether you knew it was criminal or not, you're responsible for your conduct, and because you're responsible to know the law. It's not relevant, except in this case, there are specific issues about his awareness and knowledge about certain conduct that is relevant on some issues. So it's quite complicated. Hopefully it'll sort out when I instruct you at the end. But that's why I'm allowing the questions and the answers. But do not be confused about anything that these people say is not necessarily accurate as to the state of Wisconsin law. Any question about that? Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
So you're telling us that the reason that you wanted Dominic to buy you an AR-15 as opposed to a pistol is the only reason was because you felt you couldn't lawfully possess a pistol?
Correct.
You didn't pick out the AR-15 for any other reason?
I thought it looked cool, but no.
You didn't pick it out because you wanted to go hunting with it, did you?
No.
You didn't pick it out because you were going to use it to protect your house, correct?
Correct.
You picked it out because it looked cool.
I thought it looked cool. Guess that's the reason, yes.
It resembled the types of weapons that are used in first-person shooter video games, correct?
I don't really play first-person shooter video games. I have, but I believe there's a variety of guns, including shotguns, pistols. There's guns in video games that resemble all guns.
Isn't it true when you would hang out with Dominic Black, you'd play Call of Duty and other first-person shooter video games?
Sometimes.
And those are games in which you use weapons like AR-15s to pretty much shoot anybody who comes at you, correct?
It's a video game where two players are playing together. I don't really understand the meaning of your question, to be honest.
Isn't one of the things people do in these video games try and kill everyone else with your guns?
Yeah, in the video game, it's just a video game. It's not real life.
Now, you introduced yourself as living in Walworth County right now. Is that
Yes.
right? On the date that this all happened, you were an Illinois resident?
Correct.
You had grown up in Illinois?
Correct.
You had not spent any significant time living here in Wisconsin, correct?
No.
You'd agree with me that's correct?
No, I've spent time at my father's house and partially live here also, so no, that's not correct.
You indicated you had attended Was it Penn Foster High School?
Yes,
That's an online high school?
correct.
So you were not attending high school in person.
No,
And at the time that all of the things in this case were happening, from the time the AR-15 was purchased to the night of August 25th, you were 17 years old that entire time, correct?
correct.
Could we have exhibit number 7 up, please? I have put exhibit number 7 up on the screen. Do you recognize that?
Yes, that's my old TikTok account.
That was a TikTok account that you had during the summer of 2020, correct?
Yes,
And it says your name on there, Kyle?
yes,
Your username on TikTok was 4 Doors More Whores.
yes,
And that's a picture of you there with your AR-15, correct?
yes,
And underneath that, you have put on your profile the phrase bruh, B-R-U-H, I'm just trying, T-R-Y-N-A, be famous. Is that correct?
yes,
You're the one who wrote that.
yes.
You testified that at some point you were involved in some sort of EMT cadet program.
I was a firefighter EMT cadet at Antioch Fire Department.
When was that?
I was a cadet at the Antioch Fire Department. I believe from 2018 or 2019 up until the incident of August 25th.
An EMT cadet is someone who's just beginning the process of eventually achieving full EMT certification. Is that correct?
No,
Were you studying to be an EMT before August 25th, 2020?
I was learning about certain things in the field of firefighting and EMS.
But that's not actually formal classes, is it?
No, we met once a week, and we would either, depending on the day, we would either do EMT stuff like learning how to do airways, or we do firefighter stuff like doing hose drags and learning how to crawl through buildings.
And these are things that you did with the, which firefighter? Antioch?
Antioch Fire Department.
You weren't a member of the fire department, were you?
I was.
You were a actual on-duty member on the roster of the Antioch Fire Department?
No.
So when you say you're a member, what do you mean?
I was a member of the Antioch Fire Cadet program. We were issued shirts, Antioch Fire Cadet member. We would help with the pancake breakfast at the VFWs, and we would wear Antioch Fire Department staff shirts. I still have one in my closet.
And maybe I didn't express myself clearly. You were not a member of the Antioch Fire Department, correct?
I was a member of the cadet program, which was through the fire department.
So you'd go out and fight fires.
We can go on ride-alongs, but we can't go into burning buildings for liability reasons.
You'd go out there and you'd save people from burning buildings?
Not me personally.
Because as a cadet, they would never let you anywhere near that, right?
They wouldn't let any of the cadets go into an actual live fire.
At the end of whatever this program is, you weren't actually going to be an official firefighter, were you?
No, it's to help prepare you for the firefighter academy, firefighter EMT academy.
And you weren't going to be an EMT at the end of this program either, were you?
No,
You know that to be an EMT, you have to be 18 and a high school graduate, correct?
depending on the state, in Illinois, you can take a class at the college at 16 and you can have your EMT license by the age of 17. I wasn't in that class, but in Illinois you can.
You never did any of that.
No, I was online school.
The night of August 25th, you're here in Kenosha, Wisconsin, saying you're an EMT, correct?
Yes.
That was a lie.
Yes.
You were also telling people you were 18 or 19 years old. That was a lie too, right?
No, I didn't tell anybody my age that night.
You never volunteered it at all, did you?
I didn't.
Because you knew as a 17-year-old you shouldn't have been there, right?
No, I just didn't find it relevant to give my name. Well, I gave my name, but my age to anybody. It wasn't something that came up in conversation.
It's because you felt if people found out how old you were, they'd realize you shouldn't have been there, right?
No, it just because it didn't come up in conversation. If somebody would have asked, I would have been like, yeah, I'm 17.
So you felt that as a 17-year-old, it was appropriate for you to be out on the streets of Kenosha with an AR-15 that night. Fair?
I believe I had any other right to be there as anybody else,
As any other adult.
as anybody.
But you weren't an adult.
No.
You indicated that you were working at the Recplex and had been working at the Y before that. Is that right?
Yes.
That was a YMCA down in Illinois, correct?
Correct.
And you had gotten furloughed there when COVID hit in March.
Yes.
And you had only started working at the Recplex on August 14th, correct?
I believe I got hired before that, but I was on vacation on August 14th, so I was on vacation, so I couldn't start until August 14th.
Your first time working at the Recplex was on August 14th, correct?
I believe that was my first day.
And then you worked the week after that from August 17th to August 23rd, correct?
I believe so. Till August 24th, I worked.
And then your final shift was on August 24th, correct?
Yes.
You worked a total of 41 and a half hours at the Recplex, correct?
That's the number you got.
And you were a lifeguard.
Yes.
You were walking around their swim area with one of those red, long, life-saving things, monitoring the pool,
A
correct?
rescue tube. Yes.
So, but that was at the indoor pool at the Recplex?
It was at the indoor. It was at the. I don't know if you're familiar with the Recplex.
I am.
I guarded the water park area and the competition pool.
So they've got a water park area with a slide and a zero entry pool. Is that right?
Yes.
And then next to that, they've got a larger, almost Olympic-sized pool where swim meets happen.
50-meter competition pool divided in half to make it a 25.
Okay, and you were lifeguarding at both of those.
I would rotate. We had rotations, and me and other guards, we would do three. We had 3-person shifts. We would rotate out watching the different areas of ourselves.
You indicated that at no time did this gun, this AR-15, ever leave the state of Wisconsin. Is that right?
Other than the night after, other than that,
Before the shootings.
correct.
There was a time, though, where you wanted to have it with you down in Illinois, isn't it? It wasn't there?
I believe there was a time when me and Dominic were mad at each other. Yeah,
You were mad at Dominic,
me and Dominic were mad over something.
and you wanted to have the gun with you down there?
I think I said something along those lines.
You'd agree with me that let me back up for a second here. You have testified to this jury that you used deadly force against Joseph Rosenbaum, Anthony Huber, the man who attempted to kick you in the face, and Gage Grosskreutz on the night of August 25th, correct?
Yes.
And you did that because you felt that your life was in danger from those 4 people, correct?
Yes.
And you are telling this jury that it was, in your mind, justified to use deadly force to protect your own life, correct?
Yes.
You'd agree with me that you were not allowed to use deadly force to protect that CarSource building, correct?
Well, I wasn't using deadly force to protect the property. I used deadly force to protect myself. So
Please listen to my question and answer my question if you can. You'd agree with me that you were not allowed to use deadly force to protect that CarSource building, correct?
yes.
You'd agree with me that you were not allowed to use deadly force to stop someone from smashing the windows of an unoccupied parked car, correct?
I don't think you could use deadly force for that.
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone from lighting a metal dumpster on fire, correct?
Correct?
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone from tipping over a porta potty, correct?
Correct?
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone from lighting a flatbed trailer on fire, correct?
Correct?
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone who is about to start an unoccupied car on fire, correct?
Correct?
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone from lighting some traffic cones in the middle of the street on fire, correct?
Correct?
So you understand that there's a difference between using deadly force to protect yourself and using it to protect property, correct?
Yes.
And you'd agree with me that you're not allowed to use deadly force to protect property, correct?
Yes.
But yet you have previously indicated that you wished you had your AR-15 to protect someone's property, correct?
I'm going to ask you to go into the library again for a moment, please. Please don't talk about the case. Mr. Richards?
Your Honor, Mr. Binger is either forgetting the court's rulings or attempting to provoke a mistrial in this matter. He knows he can't go into this, and he's asking the questions. I asked the court to strongly admonish him, and the next time it happens, I'll be asking for a mistrial with prejudice. He's an experienced attorney, and he knows better.
Mr. Finger?
First of all, Your Honor, this was the subject of a motion. I'm well aware of that. And the court left the door open.
For me, not for you.
My understanding of
You should have come and asked for reconsideration. You did on the one motion, and in fact, I granted your motion for reconsideration.
That was not our motion.
Excuse me. I did. I granted.
We did not move
That
for
was
reconsider.
their motion.
We have not filed
forgive
any
me.
motions to reconsider
Forgive
in
me.
this case.
That was their motion for reconsideration, which I denied. But I said I denied it, or I indicated a bias towards denial is what I did. Held it open with a bias towards denial. Why would you think that that made it okay for you without any advance notice to bring this matter before the jury? I was astonished when you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that. And it gives, I'll leave it at that. So I don't know what you're up to.
May I respond?
Yes.
We filed an other acts motion on this exact issue because in my mind, and I argued this, it is identical to what was going on the night of August 25th, in the sense that the defendant was using this exact same weapon. He was using it in a manner to try and protect property.
No, he wasn't.
Your Honor, with all due respect.
I'm not going to rehash the motion. That's absolutely untrue. No. Your arguments of record, my comments are of record, and why I ruled as I did is of record. There's nothing that I heard in this trial to suggest anything's changed, even if you're correct in your assumption that you know more than I did at the time. You should have come to the court and say, I want to go into this. Why you would think that you could go into it without any advance notice to the court, I don't understand that. And as the defense is pointing out, you're an experienced trial lawyer, and this should not have been gone into.
Your Honor, there have been things in this case, testimony in this case, that I believe opens the door to this. For example, the defense has introduced evidence that the defendant pointed a gun at a man wearing yellow pants because that person was on a car on the car source lot. Now, there's no justification that I can think of why the defendant would point that gun at someone. The defendant has just testified this morning that he agreed with that person in the yellow pants, that he pointed the gun at him. He said, I was joking when I said that to the guy in the yellow pants, but he said, he's acknowledged that he told the person in the yellow pants, yeah, you're right. I did point a gun at you when you were sitting on a car.
He said, I did. That's what he
Exactly.
testified.
So he's agreeing. May I finish, please? I'd like to have a chance to make a record if I could, without being interrupted, if that's okay. He has mentioned that he's acknowledged that he's used this gun to protect property. He's also just acknowledged that he knows he can't do that. I am attempting to impeach him now with the prior August 10th incident, 15 days prior, involving the same gun, where he is threatening to use that gun to protect property. It goes...
He had the gun with him.
Your Honor, he is saying he wished he did so he could shoot people.
You know, there's a lot of difference between commenting about something when you haven't got a gun and threatening someone when you do.
You know, it's interesting, Your Honor, because the entire defense theory in this case is Joseph Rosenbaum, who was unarmed.
I want you to tell me what the defense theory of the case is. I want.
May I respond to what you just said, Your Honor? I'd like to respond to what you just said. I apologize, Madam Court Reporter, but I'd like to try and make a record without anyone interrupting me, if that's okay. I believe that there is a central part of this case that Mr. Rosenbaum is making threats that he has no ability to carry out. So to your point, Your Honor, you're arguing that this August 10th incident, one aspect of why you don't believe it's relevant is the defendant didn't have the gun with him. This case is about someone who didn't have a weapon, and yet the jury is being told because of those threats, that means the defendant has to defend himself. So with all due respect, Your Honor, mere verbal threats have already been shown to this jury and used as a basis for someone's subsequent actions. I am attempting with the defendant to use his mere verbal threat on August 10th, 15 days prior, that he's going to shoot shoplifters with his AR-15 to impeach the defendant in a murder trial. I would ask the court's forbearance to do that. I apologize, Your Honor. You're right. I probably should have brought this to your attention earlier. I may have misunderstood your ruling because I thought your ruling was if the evidence in this case made that more relevant, you would admit it or at least consider it an admittance. I believe, based on the evidence that we've heard, and more specifically, exactly what the defendant said earlier about admitting pointing a gun at someone who was merely jumping or sitting on a car, that the door is open now to this testimony. And I continue to believe that his state of mind, his intent, his belief as to self-defense is the core of this case. That was the basis for my motion. You were strongly inclined against it. I understand that. But now we're in the middle of trial, and there's been a lot of evidence that's come in that I think makes this relevant. So I'm attempting to impeach the defendant on his beliefs. I believe I'm entitled to impeach the defendant on his beliefs and on his statements.
I'm going to interrupt you now because you're talking about his beliefs. I think that's what they call
his statements to, Your Honor, because he just said, can't use deadly force, can't threaten to use deadly force to protect property. So now I'm impeaching him on that.
Your Honor, the court has seen no reason to change its ruling. And just so this record is clear, in spite of the lengthy statement by Mr. Binger, before we started today, the court specifically stated in Mr. Binger's presence, there's been nothing to have me change any of my rulings. There have been numerous occasions during this trial where they've opened the door. The one time when they're going into Mr. Rosenbaum's prior reason he doesn't like guns. And I said something, I whispered in Mr. Krause's ear, it's because of the prior convictions. Please stop. And he did. He knows if you're going to go into something that's been excluded in a pretrial order, you better ask the court, you better get permission. This is ridiculous.
It wasn't excluded, Your Honor.
You know why it was excluded in the first place? Because it was propensity evidence. That is exactly what 90404 is designed to prevent. You're talking about his attitudes, his attitude is he wants to shoot people. Now, I've admitted that kind of evidence in other trials when it's been appropriate. I didn't admit it in this case because to me, what I've heard in this trial, and by the way, Mr. Richards absolutely correctly points out that just hours ago, I said I had heard nothing in this trial to change any of my rulings. So why?
Testimony, Your Honor.
Pardon me?
That was before the
Don't
defense testimony.
get brazen with me. You knew very well. You know very well that an attorney can't go into these types of areas when the judge has already ruled without asking outside the presence of the jury to do so. So don't give me that. That's number one. Number two, this is propensity evidence. I said at the time that I made my ruling, and I'll repeat again now for you, I see no similarity between talking about wishing you had your AR gun, which you don't have, so that you could fire rounds at these thought to be shoplifters, and the incidents in these cases, which are not, there's nothing in your case that suggests the defendant was lying in wait to shoot at somebody or reflecting upon the shooting for a vast amount of time. Every one of the incidents involves matters that involve seconds in time. So I commented at the time, I don't see the similarity, and I don't see the similarity now. If it's not similar, that's the whole rule. Those are all the exceptions to 90404. Check the authorities, Wigmore and evidence, Judge Weinstein, Colonel McCormick. It's the prior act has to bear the signature of the accused, or it has to be so similar as to suggest it's a common plan or something like that. You have an incident where he's making comments about some alleged shoplifters versus crimes that involve instantaneous actions, whether premeditated murder or whether self-defense, that's for the jury to decide. But I don't see the similarity. I said it couldn't come in, and it isn't coming in, no matter what you think. Number two, I have to be concerned that with what Mr. Richards has said about the progress of the trial, and when you were I said you were over the line, close to or over the line on commenting on the defendant's pretrial silence, which is a well-known rule. I'm astonished that would have been an issue. So I don't want to have another issue as long as this case continues. Is that clear?
It is.
Thank you. Ask the jury to come back in, please. All right, folks, the objection has been sustained. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, Judge. So I want to turn your attention to the day of August 25th, 2020.
Okay.
You had spent the night at Dominic Black's house, is that right?
Yes.
And you indicated that you had worked at the Recplex the night before, is that right?
The 24th, correct.
Okay. And you worked until about 7 p.m.?
I couldn't give you the exact time, but I'd say I got off around between 6 and 7. I don't recall. It's been while.
And then you drove your car over to Dominic's house?
Yes.
Okay, so the rest of the time, it seems like you're being driven around in Mr. Black's car. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Why did you guys use his instead of yours, if you know?
At the time, I didn't have a driver's license, and I would drive just to get to work and sometimes to go to Dominic's dad's house.
So even though you didn't have a driver's license, you drove from your home in Antioch to the Recplex to work that day?
Yes, to be able to get to work.
And then after work, you drove without a driver's license to Dominic Black's house?
Yes.
So I assume then on the week prior to that, when you drive yourself to work, that was also without a driver's license?
Objection to this. Let's go to.
I'll move on. So you drove to Mr. Black's house, you left your car there,
Yes.
and you spent the night at his house.
Yes.
And then the next day, you guys woke up at some point and came down to Ruther. Is that right?
Spent the night at his house and had dinner. Woke up in the morning. Had breakfast. We were going through I was on social media and we saw the damage, and we saw the car store, so we decided to go downtown.
And you came down in Dominic's car.
Correct.
And you said that there was a time in which you were cleaning graffiti at Ruther.
Yes.
And then at some point, I believe you said, and I want to make sure I'm understanding the timeline here, that you went to one of the car sources and encountered the owners, Sam or Sal or whoever they are, correct?
Yes.
Which of the car source locations was that?
It was the car source right here.
And that's the one at the northeast corner of 59th and Sheridan?
Correct.
And that's the one that had gotten totally burned out on one of the previous nights?
Yes, that was the one where everything was destroyed. The other car sources still had cars there. So
Now, before that, had you ever worked at Car Source before?
I have not.
Had you ever bought a car there before?
I have not.
Had you ever even heard of Car Source before all that?
Yes.
Through Dominic?
Well, no. I would drive past it on a daily basis. I was in Kenosha almost every day, and I drive down Sheridan Road almost every day.
Okay. So you saw the business along with the churches and the ultimate gas station and the courthouse and everything else in that area?
Yes.
Okay. And you talked to these owners yourself?
Me and Dominic did.
And did they ask you to come protect the property?
They didn't ask me
Directly?
They didn't ask me directly. They asked Nick Smith.
Okay. And was Nick Smith around for that at that moment?
He wasn't there when me and Dominic were talking to them.
Did you ever personally witness any of these Car Source folks, Sal or Sam or any of the folks that were running that business? Did you ever personally witness them ask Nick Smith to guard any of their properties?
No.
Did you ever witness any of them ask anyone to guard any of their properties?
Not that I can recall.
What time, if you recall, did you find out that they'd asked Nick Smith?
I believe I said in my direct examination between 3:15 and 3:30.
And that was shortly after you had sent a text to Sam, right?
Correct.
And you texted him and asked him if you could protect his business that night, correct?
I did.
And in that text, you said, I'm more than willing and will be armed, correct?
Yes.
You meant you'd be armed with your AR-15?
Yes.
And you said that me and my brother would both be there armed, correct?
Yes.
By your brother, you meant Dominic?
Yes.
He's obviously not legally your brother.
No.
And you said in the text, I just need address. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Why did you need the address of a location you'd already been to?
I just wanted to pinpoint it on the Google Maps because GPS, because with all the roads were closed down in Kenosha. I just wanted to know the best route to drive there with Dominic.
But you just told us that you drove past here every day up and down Sheridan. Why did you need GPS to help you find a place that you drive past every day?
The roads weren't closed when I drove past them every day.
But you still knew where you were going, right?
Sort of, but with the back roads.
Okay, so let's talk about the roads being closed. What do you mean by that?
Well, Sheridan Road was closed off, and I'm trying to remember. I don't think there are a lot of roads closed off. I couldn't tell you exactly their names right now.
Was that because there was construction going on?
No, they were closed off because of the riots.
They were closed off to keep people out of the area, right?
Yes.
And you knew there was a curfew that night, right?
I believe I got an emergency alert text at around 8 p.m.
Just like everybody else saying, stay off the streets.
I'm sorry.
Objection. There's no curfew charge.
It's still relevant to his decision making. Just like everybody else, you got a message saying, get off the streets at 8 o'clock that night, right?
Yes.
And despite that message, you came down, correct?
I was already in Kenosha downtown when I got that message.
Once you got that message, you didn't decide, I'm going to leave and go home like I'm supposed to, correct?
I stayed at the car source.
And you knew that there was this curfew in place that meant you shouldn't be there anymore, correct?
There were, I'd say, hundreds, if not thousands, of other people there that night that also got the same message.
So if they're all breaking the law, you can too?
I don't think the curfew was really being enforced.
So if a law is not being enforced, you can disregard it?
It's argumentative.
You said that there was a time in which Nick Smith asked you guys to drive him down to Chicago
Correct.
to buy a piece of body armor
Correct.
down by O'Hare.
Correct.
And you guys were willing to do that at first.
Dominic was willing to do it. It was more of Dominic's thing because Nick Smith was going to throw in like $20 to Dominic when he bought it for like gas.
So Nick Smith was going to pay $20 for the gas to drive down to O'Hare where Nick Smith was planning on buying this body armor.
Yes.
And he needed that body, or the idea was the body armor would be used that night, correct?
I believe so.
That's why there was some urgency about going down right away, right?
Yeah.
This was part of the plan to come down to downtown that night, right?
He wanted to go to O'Hare to buy the body armor. So, yes.
Do you understand my question?
Can you rephrase
Sure,
it?
absolutely.
Like,
The urgency to get that body armor that day was because he needed it for that night, right?
well, I wouldn't say he needed it, but he wanted it.
And instead of making the drive, you gave that your own body armor to Nicholas Smith.
Correct.
You had it along with you.
Yes.
You brought it along with you that day because you thought you might need it yourself that night, correct?
No, I kept it in my trunk of the car. I always had it.
You drive around with body armor in the trunk of your car regularly?
Well, it was just in the back of my trunk. I never really took it out.
And you said at some point that day you went to Jelinski's. That's the hunting goods, fishing store out on Highway 31 and 52nd Street to buy a couple of slings. Is that right?
That's correct.
And this was one sling for you and one for Dominic, right?
Yes.
And you bought two of the identical type of sling, correct?
Yes. The cheapest ones they had.
And that's a single point sling, meaning it attaches to the gun in one location, correct?
Yes.
And then it wraps around your body, correct?
Yes.
And it's designed to help you retain possession of that weapon, correct?
You'd probably know more about them than I do. I just got it to hold the rifle. So when I'm doing medical aid, I don't have to sit on the ground and have to worry about it being stolen.
Because you realize that you couldn't have that gun on you while you're doing any sort of medical aid, correct?
I knew that I couldn't, without a sling, have it on me. That's why I got the sling, so I could have my hands free.
But even when you had the sling, there was a time in which you took off your entire gun apparatus and handed it to Joanne Fiedler because it was in the way of you trying to treat someone, right?
At that instance, yes, because it was hitting the ground The rifle was hitting the ground. When I bought it, that was the purpose of it. I don't think it really worked. Now that I think of it,
This big, long AR-15 really got in the way whenever you tried to help someone, right?
sometimes,
If you had a handgun, for example, it would have been physically more easy for you to try and treat someone. Fair?
if I could have legally carried a handgun, I would have carried a handgun instead of a pistol. I mean, instead of a rifle.
You grabbed some medical supplies from Dominic Black's house before you came downtown that night, correct?
I grabbed extra gauze, but that's about it.
You testified earlier that your AR-15 was loaded with 30 rounds of ammunition. Is that right?
Yes,
Where did that ammunition come from?
that was from our last trip up north, from May, the time we took it up north.
So when the gun was left at Dominic Black's house, it had that ammunition with it?
The ammo was in a box. In a magazine. I don't really know.
When you were at Dominic Black's house on August 25th, you found that AR-15 downstairs in his basement, correct?
No,
Where did you find it at?
it was downstairs in the basement, but I was told by Dominic Black, "Hey, go downstairs, grab that rifle, grab your rifle."
So you knew up until that point that rifle was being stored in a gun safe in the garage, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't have the code or any access to that gun safe, correct?
I did not.
It just happened that on this particular day, Dominic Black's stepfather had moved that gun into the house, correct?
Yes,
You didn't know that beforehand?
I didn't.
You didn't know that it had been taken out of the safe?
No.
And so you went downstairs and grabbed it.
After instructed to do so by Dominic, I did.
And it had that magazine?
After I was instructed to do so by Dominic, I did go downstairs and grab it.
And it had the magazine already inserted in the rifle?
It did.
And the magazine was already loaded with 30 rounds.
I believe so.
When did you chamber a round?
I don't know if I ever did.
Well, you had to have to fire the gun, right?
Yeah, I think it was already chambered when I got it. That's what I remember. I don't remember racking it at all that night.
Because the way this type of gun works is that you have to have a magazine with ammo in it. You have to insert the magazine into the gun, and then you have to rack it to load one of those rounds into the chamber, correct?
Yes.
And you were familiar with how to do all of that, correct?
Yes.
And it can't discharge a bullet unless a bullet is racked into the chamber, correct?
Correct.
And so your testimony here, as best you can recall, is that you never had to do the initial racking because the bullet was already in the chamber when you took possession of it that day. Is that fair to say?
I believe so. I believe that it was already racked.
And the ammunition that was in that was full metal jacket ammunition, correct?
223 full metal jacket.
223 being the caliber,
Yes.
and full metal jacket being the type of casing, correct?
Yes. Full metal jacket is the bullet type.
The bullet type. Okay, I apologize. And you're aware there are different types of bullets, like hollow point bullets, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And when you were in the process of purchasing this gun, well, let me back up for a second. You said that the 30 rounds of ammo were left over from previous. I assume you mean when you were up in Ladysmith
Yes.
and you were practicing with the gun up there?
Yes.
And Dominic Black's family has some sort of firing range or shooting range up there. Is that right?
They have a gravel pit where it's safe to shoot.
And you and Dominic would practice with your AR-15s shooting at targets in that gravel pit, correct?
Correct.
And you would shoot at targets as far as, 75 yards away?
No.
How close were the targets?
I think the furthest I ever got was maybe from me to the TV.
You didn't shoot at any targets farther away than that?
No,
Dominic Black testified that he shot at targets 75 yards away. Did you see him do that?
I didn't, but I don't know what Dominic Black saw or what Dominic Black was shooting at. I wasn't with him when he did that.
You were aware of the fact that the AR-15 was capable of hitting targets much further away than you to the TV, correct?
I believe so.
Did you know the capabilities of your own weapon?
I knew that it could shoot, and I believe from a distance. I don't know how far. I'm not an expert on AR-15s.
Did you personally purchase that 223 full metal jacket ammunition?
I did not.
Who did?
Dominic did.
Did you ask him to purchase it?
I did not.
So you didn't know what type of ammo was in that gun. Is that right?
I knew they were 223 full metal jackets. The first time I shot it, I had to load it into the magazine.
So you knew the type of round, but you didn't know what those rounds were capable of doing. Is that fair to say?
Believe a bullet's a bullet.
As you sit here today, you know that there are different types of bullets, right?
Yes.
You know that hollow point bullets, for example, do different things to a animal or a human than full metal jacket bullets, correct?
Yeah. Full metal jacket is like a defense round, like another type of defense round. I know people use full metal jacket for hunting, and hollow point is something that causes more damage.
Hollow point bullets are designed to hit the animal that they're being shot at, let's say a deer, for example, and explode inside that body, correct?
No, I don't think so.
When you say explode, are you saying expand or explode? Because there are such things as exploding bullets.
Sure. Let me rephrase. Mr. Rittenhouse, what is your understanding of what a hollow point bullet would do if it were shot at, say, a deer?
I don't think people use hollow point.
That wasn't my question, sir. What is your understanding of what that bullet would do? Let me rephrase it then, because you're aware that people use hollow point bullets in their pistols to defend themselves against other people, correct?
Yes.
Ryan Balch, for example, testified in this trial that he was carrying a pistol loaded with hollow point ammunition for self-defense. Do you remember that testimony?
I do.
So what is your understanding, if you have one, as to what hollow point ammunition would do to a human?
I believe it would do the same thing as any other bullet. Like I said, a bullet's a bullet. I just believe hollow points. I'm sorry, I don't know much about ammo. I'm trying to think of what I remember, but I just don't know much about ammo.
So you didn't know the difference between what a full metal jacket bullet would do versus a hollow point, right?
I believe a hollow point I just don't know much about this. I believe a hollow point would cause more damage
To the first target, but it wouldn't continue through to any other targets, right?
I don't know the answer
Whereas
to
a
that.
full metal jacket bullet is specifically designed to continue through its first target and keep flying, correct?
First of all, the hollow point is not guaranteed to stay in the first object struck, which is, so what you said was not correct. Secondly,
There's no testimony on that, Your Honor.
no, but you've been testifying, and that's what we're going to take a break for lunch. Please don't talk about the case. Read, watch, or listen to any account of the trial. We'll see you, let's hope, at about 12:45. Oh, I've got a couple of hearings. Let's say 1 o'clock. I apologize for taking time away from you.
Hey, you telling me how to fly?
Okay, thank you.
Please. It's amazing! What can be done by a toy train? Toy? Gertrude isn't a toy. Gertrude is the very best train in the whole.
Who wants to come out? I don't know how this works, so.
This is my little brother George. This is Mama Pig. And this is Daddy. At the beach.
Pepper and her family are going to the beach. Pepper and George love going to the beach.
What a lot of stuff.
Okay,
You must be careful not to forget anything.
turn off Peppa Pig.
Sunshades, beach bag, towels, buckets and spades, and a spotting board. Now, before you start playing, you need some sun cream on.
The sun is very hot. Pepper and George have something on.
Let's try out this spotty ball.
There we go. All right. Come on, who's coming up? Where's Diane? Just talk. I have a lot to say about this this trial. I don't know. He's not looking too good right now on the prosecutor's side, but that is what they're built to do. To chew him up. Self-defense is self-defense. Move it to its. Somebody hit that link. Making a coffee. I don't know how to. No, I'm being so quiet. I'm sorry. I am trying to figure these things out here. So I don't know. Who's in here with me? Somebody talk to me. I'm lonely. All right, you guys. I'm going to come back after the trial's lunch. That way I don't lose all my hours on my StreamYard. I'm sure everybody is listening to the gossip that's going on right now. I have not. So I am out of the loop today. Out of commission. So somebody needs to fill me in, and then we'll talk about it when we come back. My daughter's in the bath right now, so I am going to go have fun with her and try not to get too wet. And I'll be back. Bye, y'all.